Hello, Erik. Thank you for joining the Internal Communication Spotlight series that I run on my blog. As you know, this is a series where I talk to a lot of thought leaders on various topics on communications, and I've spoken about crisis communication, change management, and many other topics. And thank you for taking the time to talk about business acumen, which is very important for all communicators, I think.
Yeah.
So before we get started, Erik, if it would be great if you could quickly introduce yourself for our viewers.
Sure. Thanks so much, Anissa, for the invitation. Erik Myers. I'm originally from the US. I've lived in Europe for over 20 years, mainly worked in communications roles at premium brands like BASF, SAP, and Hilti. Also worked on corporate strategy and worked in a board staff role. And about 6 months ago, I've now started my own consultancy around digital communications, organizational change, and leadership communication. So glad to talk to you today.
Brilliant, brilliant. And this topic is, it's assumed that it's a given that people would appreciate and understand business acumen or have a good sense of how business works. But how do you understand it? How do you define business acumen?
I think in general, it's understanding first the corporate strategy, the products and solutions that the company offers, what are the corporate values, what is the corporate history, and really having a true understanding of each company that you work in.
Right. And according to you, is it a skill or is it an ability? How do you kind of look at it?
I would say it's a skill. I mean, everywhere you work, you can learn about where you're working rather than just staying sort of at the high level overview of the company. And I think with each company that you work for and each role you're in, you can learn different aspects of the company and different industries. So I think it's definitely a skill that you can learn. Not certain people can understand business or not, others don't.
Got it. And why do you think it's important for internal communicators?
I mean, I think in general, from my perspective, every communicator needs to really understand where they work. I think from my personal perspective, I've seen many communicators who sort of want to stay at this 30,000 foot, I don't know, working with the board, but they don't really understand what the company does. And I think you don't have to be, for example, I worked at BASF, you don't have to be a chemist, but you do need to understand what products, how they're produced. And in particular for internal communicators, you need to understand every type of employee that your company has, which at BASF, for example, is production staff. So you really can't, from my perspective, do your job unless you understand the different perspectives of the employees as much as you can, of course. And I think that really adds value to your work, but also creates a sense of appreciation in employees that you're interested in seeing what they do, what are their challenges. And I guess as an internal communicator, you're also somehow a moderator between leadership and employees, and you can bring sort of these concerns of employees also to management.
Right. I think you alluded to related to the next question, which was more about, what can internal communicators do more to get business insights or gain business smarts. But is there some steps you think they should do while they are going about getting this edge at work?
I mean, I think one thing that you can definitely do is ask questions, as many as possible. I think I've heard from managers I've had or others, people who ask questions obviously don't know what they're doing, which is for me a bit odd. I mean, every company that you work in, you need to sort of start afresh. So you obviously have your communicators toolbox, you have your experience and your expertise, but you shouldn't assume that what you did in company A works in company B. And you can really start, I think that's the number one thing that I've done. When you start in a new company, don't act as if you're just going to do everything in the old, and people really appreciate that because nobody wants you to tell them what you did in the last company. And usually, some people perhaps already in the company, or at least have a mentor who can help you. And as you have time, meet different people from different areas, and try to understand their problems, their topics. And you can get a really in-depth understanding of the company, even if you're not sort of the expert in the field, like, as I said, BASF chemist or at SAP a developer. And it builds over time. I mean, you build a network, it doesn't happen overnight, but I think you need to show right at the beginning interest in learning more about what the company does, and trying to figure out how what they do and what the topics are there can best be communicated.
Great, fantastic. And according in your experience, what are some of the upsides and downsides of gaining business sense or ignoring business sense?
I mean, I think I said a couple before. I think when you demonstrate that you are interested in actually what the company does, you can gain a lot of trust with senior leadership as well as with employees. When you really, I mean, I always call it the leveraging synergies type of communication. Very high level. It's all about meeting with executives. I think that doesn't really help. When you demonstrate you're at least trying to understand the business, you can create trust both with leadership and employees. And I think for what I've done in my career is try to do work in different industries, which really teaches you a lot in general. So you learn how chemistry works, or I was at Hilti learning how the tools there are made, SAP learning about how software is developed, learning about customers. I think that's really important. I mean, in general, in communicators, you should be talking to as many stakeholders as you can. If you're doing overall, it's also including external, but for internal, trying to understand what employees do, what their problems are, because I think often in companies, problems, people don't necessarily want to talk about them, or employees are worried that they won't be heard, and you can really, this gives you the insights to have that conversation with them.
Got it. Great. And as we wrap up, Erik, what's your advice? What is that one tip or you will share for internal communicators to get a better grasp of how things work?
I mean, I think if you work in communications, really realize that to do your job, you need to understand what the company does. Even if you're not an expert, as I've said, really ask questions, try to meet as many people as possible from different areas, different jobs. It'll enrich you and your learning for your career, and also really, really help you give context when you're creating content or moderating events.
Fantastic. This has been brilliant. Thank you so much, Erik, for taking the time to share these wonderful insights. And that's really very valuable for our viewers.
Thank you very much.